Early in the morning, King Basaini entered the Seven Origins Sutra Society, his expression notably heavy and perplexed. He approached the Buddha, respectfully bowed his head, and saluted, "Shakyamuni, I have come today because there is a matter of doubt in my heart. I earnestly seek your guidance. Recently, I witnessed a strange event in Savatthi that has left my heart unsettled for a long time. In the city, there is a merchant who year after year served as a judicial officer. He not only generously gives to the poor beings, but also supports the monks, fully manifesting impeccable virtue. Logically, a person who performs virtuous deeds extensively, like him, should attain immeasurable blessings and good karmic results. Strangely, his family business not only failed to grow but gradually declined, to the point of becoming unprofitable. The tone of the drowning in Persia is full of confusion, yet it should be a way to accumulate merit. Could I have been mistaken? Why does such a result occur?" The Buddha remained silent for a moment, then smiled gently and said, "Great King, the relationship with merit and blessings is not as simple as the world commonly believes. To truly understand this point, let me first tell you a story. The story of Devdatta may help you better understand the subtle relationship between non-attachment and merit. Devdatta was born into a wealthy merchant family, and from a young age was immersed in the family's commercial wisdom. As the years passed, he inherited the family business, and, relying on his keen business acumen and honest management, the family enterprise prospered increasingly, with wealth accumulating like a snowball, growing ever larger. In the business world, Subhudi's reputation grew day by day, becoming a model wealthy merchant in people's eyes. However, despite Subhudi's wealth increasing year by year, his heart was always filled with an unrelenting desire, the pursuit of merit and blessings. This pursuit is not merely a greed for wealth, but an inner quest for the meaning of life. He began to contemplate whether performing acts of generosity through giving could accumulate more merit for himself and even bring greater fortune to his family. Thus, Siddhartha extended his virtuous deeds more broadly and openly, beginning to give generously. His acts of charity expanded from his family and close friends to encompass the entire city. One day, Siddhartha encountered an ascetic monk on a small path outside the city. This monk appears somewhat different from the usual monks. He is dressed in simple robes, and his hands are covered with calluses, clearly marks of long and arduous practice. However, the monk's calm and unhurried demeanor, along with his serene and clear gaze, naturally evokes a profound sense of reverence. Suddhodana looked at him, feeling moved in his heart. He stepped forward and respectfully said, "Venerable sir, it seems you have not had a proper meal for a long time. Please come to my home to eat." The ascetic once smiled faintly, looking into Siddhartha's eyes. He seemed to observe his sincerity, then gently nodded in agreement. From then on, Siddhartha began to offer daily alms to that bhikkhu, providing him with meals, and his business also became increasingly prosperous. Whether it was the business deals that initially fell through or the outstanding payments, they all seemed to have been resolved, and new business opportunities kept arriving one after another. Whenever he gave alms, an indescribable joy surged within his heart. He began to firmly believe in the power of generosity, considering it the proper way to accumulate merit. Thus, Siddhartha began generously giving alms widely throughout the city. Whenever he saw a monk or nun carrying a begging bowl, he would always donate generously. Moreover, he established a community dedicated to providing relief for the poor and destitute without support. These virtuous deeds made his reputation widespread. The people throughout the city knew of Siddhartha's generosity and good actions, and many honored him as the great virtuous one. He began to enjoy the fulfillment and honor brought by generosity, and his heart became more firmly convinced that generosity is the true path to Bodhi. However, as the scale of generosity continually expanded, subtle changes arose within Siddhartha's heart. Initially, his mindset when giving was pure and selfless. He had no expectation of any return. However, as the amount of giving increased, the expectation in the heart quietly arose as well. Suddhodana began to secretly contemplate that after making such extensive offerings this time, he should receive even greater merit. He began comparing his own acts of generosity with those of other merchants, fearing that his offerings were insufficient and worrying that he was falling behind in the accumulation of merit. He became increasingly anxious. Generosity ceases to be a spontaneous joy of the heart and instead becomes an obligatory duty and burden. Every time he practices generosity, he silently calculates the financial cost he has borne, even assessing the virtue of each recipient in his mind, weighing whether the act of giving is truly worthwhile. Gradually, Siddhartha lost the initial joy and pure state of mind that came with selfless giving. Each act of generosity was accompanied by a heavy burden. His business began to change. Debtors started delaying payments. Once reliable partners began breaching contracts. Inventory piled up, and losses followed one after another. Siddhartha never imagined that his earnest intention to reverse the situation through larger-scale almsgiving would only make matters worse. He even began to doubt whether his acts of generosity were effective and whether almsgiving could truly bring about merit and blessings. Just as he was on the verge of doubting the practice of generosity, a turning point quietly emerged. One day, a devotee dressed in simple robes came to his shop. This supplicant appears much like an ordinary mendicant, yet his demeanor is distinct, exuding an unspoken solemnity and profound depth in his manner. Subhuti was preparing to make an offering as usual, but the supplicant raised a hand to signal, "Benefactor, please wait a moment. May I ask you a question before you begin?" Subhata was momentarily stunned, then nodded in agreement. The supplicant gazed at him with profound eyes and slowly asked, "Donor, do you know why you offer charity?" This question struck like a lightning bolt, hitting the very depths of Subhuti's heart. He suddenly felt a wave of emptiness and confusion, realizing that he had long forgotten the original intention of non-duality. Initially, his non-differentiation arose solely from love and respect for all sentient beings. But now, behind his non-differentiation lies a hidden desire for reciprocation and a calculation of merit. At this moment, Siddhartha's heart felt as if a layer of mist had been parted. He sensed that he had lost his direction. Just as Siddhartha fell into deep contemplation, realizing his own delusion in giving, a miraculous event occurred. Suddenly, the Bodhisattva emitted 10,000 rays of golden light, instantly revealing a majestic Dharma form. It turned out that he was an incarnation of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Siddhartha knelt down in astonishment, palms joined together, his heart filled with immense reverence and deep emotion. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled gently and spoke softly. "Siddhartha, why do you feel confused?" Siddhartha's mind was filled with countless questions, but he only asked, "Venerable, I once believed that giving was a means of accumulating merit. Yet now I find myself confused and disheartened by generosity, unable to experience the original purity and joy it once brought. What is the true meaning of ultimate generosity? Why is it that the more wholeheartedly I engage in it, the more I feel distance from the merit of generosity?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva gazed compassionately at Siddhartha, his demeanor calm and profound. Giving is not merely the simple act of material donation. It holds a deeper meaning and a profound spiritual realm. The confusion you have experienced arises precisely because you remain on the surface of giving, unable to grasp the true meaning of generosity. The voice of the Bodhisattva is like a spring breeze brushing the face, warm and clear. He continued, saying that generosity has 3 levels, and you are currently at the first level. Siddhartha paused for a moment and urgently asked, "Venerable Sir, please enlighten me. What are the 3 levels of generosity?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled gently and began slowly. The first level of generosity is the outward appearance of giving, which is simply the act of material donation. You have given wealth and helped others. But if it is done solely for the sake of receiving rewards or merely for superficial merit, then it remains only at the most basic level. Although your actions may appear selfless, the deep-seated expectations and desires within your heart prevent your generosity from attaining the pure merit it should. Subhuti nodded, as if he finally understood why he no longer felt content in giving alms. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva further explained that the second level of realization pertains to the nature of the mind in generosity, which refers to the attitude and intention you have when practicing giving. True generosity is not merely the offering of material possessions. More importantly, it is the attitude of mind with which one gives. If you give alms with the expectation of receiving something in return, your mind filled with calculation and gain and loss, that is an afflicted mind. Defiled mind. What is the defiled mind? Subhuti asked curiously, his eyes filled with a longing to seek. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva slowly said, the defiled mind is the mind that craves for reward. If the mind in the state of non-attachment harbors the thought of wanting to obtain something, then it is a defiled mind. Originally, your unstained state arises from the joy within and the care for the welfare of others. This is a pure and serene mind. However, when you begin to expect blessings, non-attachment turns into a transaction, thereby losing the true meaning of non-attachment. If generosity is accompanied by a contaminated mind, it is like adding mud to clear water, making it turbid and unable to nourish others or purify oneself. Siddhartha bowed his head in contemplation, his heart stirred with a profound joy. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva continued, stating that the third stage of giving is the giving of the appearance of giving, which refers to the realm of the emptiness of the three wheels, the giver, the gift, and the recipient. In this state, poetry is no longer a triadic relationship among poet, receiver, and poem, but rather the absence of self, other, and poem. In the moment of non-poetry, the poet's self, the recipient's otherness, and the object of non-poetry all cease to exist. All discerning thoughts vanish, and the mind completely merges into the process of non-poetry. At this moment, the non-poetry has transcended the worldly causality, reaching the state of non-attachment and non-grasping. Siddhartha listened as if intoxicated, as if a long-sealed window had been opened. Gradually, an indescribable awakening and clarity surged within his heart. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva looked at his expression and smiled, saying, the initial purity and joy you experienced without losing the moment is precisely the state when you were untouched by defilements and undisturbed by the mind. Later, you craved rewards, and your mind became filled with greed and discrimination, thereby gradually losing the true meaning of non-attachment. True non-attachment is the absence of clinging and expectation. It is the liberation and transcendence of a mind. In this process, you're not only benefiting others, but also cultivating your own mind and character. When you remain unshaken, no longer calculating gains and losses, but instead think of all beings and feel compassion for their suffering. The unwavering resolution at this very moment is the self-measure that leads to liberation from the cycle of birth and death and the attainment of enlightenment. The words of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva nourished Siddhartha's heart like a clear spring, filling him with unparalleled clarity and relief. Siddhartha, as if awakening from a dream, deeply grateful for the Bodhisattva's teaching, joined his palms together and sincerely said, I understand, Venerable. Loss is not merely about material opportunity, but also a form of new cultivation. I should not cling to the notion of reward, but sincerely benefit all sentient beings from the depths of my heart. The true meaning of generosity lies precisely in the mind free from attachment to gain and in the purity of the heart. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva nodded gently, his face radiant with a smile. Siddhartha, your understanding of this principle indicates that your practice has already laid a profound foundation. Remember, The three realms of giving, dana, are not only acts of generosity towards the welfare of others, but also a process of inner evolution and spiritual elevation for oneself. When you reach the state of threefold emptiness and the emptiness of inherent nature, giving is no longer a mere act. It becomes a wisdom and merit free from attachment and form. The words of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva were deeply imprinted in Subhuti's heart, awakening him as if from a dream. He suddenly realized that the key to generosity does not lie in the amount of material given, but in the attitude and intention of the giver. From that moment on, Subhuti resolved to completely transform his way of giving. He no longer simply pursues the quantity and return of giving, but begins to focus on the appropriate state of mind. He understood that right conduct is not merely an external behavior, but also a profound practice of the inner mind. Subhuti began to reflect on his various unblemished experiences from the past. He realized that although his past generosity appeared selfless on the surface, his heart was filled with an attitude of expecting something in return. In order to correct his mindset, Siddhartha began to calm his mind before each act of giving, repeatedly reminding himself that the true purpose of generosity was not to accumulate merit, but for the benefit of all beings, motivated by deep compassion and sympathy for their suffering. Each time he did not lose, he reminded himself to let go of the attachment to rewards and maintain a pure mind. Not recognizing the times, he no longer thinks about how much he has given, but instead focuses on the mindset of unawareness, whether he can selflessly help others, and whether he can cultivate a heart that becomes more peaceful and joyful. Remarkably, as his mindset transformed, the external world also underwent subtle changes. Initially, his anxious heart, driven by the expectation of merit and blessings, gradually subsided, and the difficulties in his business began to be resolved. The previously outstanding payments have begun to arrive one after another. The relationships with partners are gradually being restored, and even new business opportunities are coming in succession. However, Sudaaw did not feel excited or satisfied because of this, as he no longer pursued external changes, but focused on inner tranquility and joy. He realized that the greatest benefit brought by generosity was no longer the increase of wealth, but the tranquility and contentment of the mind. The story of Devdatta began to spread widely in the city of Shrivasthi, where people not only admired his generous offerings, but also revered the awakening and transformation he experienced through his acts of giving. Many people began to ask him about the true meaning of generosity, and Siddhartha patiently explained that generosity is not merely the giving of material things, but also the cultivation of the mind. He said that when giving alms, one should not expect anything in return, but rather care for others, perceive their suffering, and help them to the best of one's ability. The true meaning of generosity lies in the transformation of the heart, in removing greed and attachment, in letting go of expectations for returns, and in eliminating selfish thoughts. The most important aspect of generosity, dana, is the attitude of giving with a pure and selfless heart. Gradually, he understood the teaching in the Diamond Sutra. Because there is no abiding, one generates the mind. Generosity should not be attached to the giver, the receiver, or the object given. Rather, one must transcend these appearances, for the Dharma is boundless. The true significance of every virtuous deed we perform lies not in its external outcome, but in the transformation and elevation of the mind. When we give with a pure heart and help others with a mind free of attachment to gain, we move one step closer to enlightenment. At the core of all this is the practice of the mind. As the Buddha said, when the mind arises, various phenomena arise. When the mind ceases, various phenomena cease. Through generosity, we ultimately eradicate the inner afflictions and attachments, welcoming a state of greater tranquility and enlightenment.